Warm and joyful greetings to you today. Welcome to Nurture the Soul. I am your host for the next month. My name is Rachel Ward, they, them. I'm the team leader and minister for Gender and Sexuality Justice Ministries, your gender and sexuality justice team at the national setting of the United Church of Christ, and a part of Justice and Local Church Ministries. If you're new to this webinar or you've been around the block with us, Nurture the Soul is a weekly webinar sharing practical, educational, innovative, and formational resources and engaging critical topics for local churches and people of faith. From cultural and community organizing to congregational leadership, from worship to theology, to resourcing small and rural churches, from ministry with youth and children to wide-ranging justice issues. We feature guest artists, authors, and key leaders of this moment. Nurture the Soul moves with and engages the ways the gospel is alive in this very second that you and I are together here. This is a space for connection, community, and nurture. And together, we can bring our church, our community, and the world towards the world God imagines for all of us and calls us into. So this is my invitation to you before we get started to join us every Thursday at 3:30 Eastern Standard Time for Nurture the Soul. And because we take care of each other, we would love for you to consider giving us an offering that enhances the ministry of your soul. So please consider donating towards the annual fund of the United Church of Christ by texting UCC to 41444. Your financial support helps sustain the ministries that we bring you, and together we can create a more just world. So I am so glad that you're here today, that you're spending your time, your afternoon with us. And I want to invite you to return for the entire month, because it's all comprehensive and it all makes sense and it goes together, and it's an offering that I deeply believe, our team deeply believes, guests deeply believe will change the way that you do ministry in your local context when it comes to engaging the queer community that we love so much. So this is a special offering. So usually you might see Tracy Howell from Faith Info. This month, you're going to see me and a lot of my dear friends having a lot of deep, intentional dialogue around the experiences that queer folks have, what the state of this moment looks like, means for us, and how we can collectively offer care and just action together. So each episode will build on top of each other and help us get to that end of August marker where we'll be able to really ask ourselves individually and together, what does it mean to play a role in seeking justice, love, and care for our queer folks? So, drum roll. Today, I'm over the moon to welcome my friend and colleague, Dr. Katrina Roseboro-Marsh, who currently serves as the new executive director of the Open and Affirming Coalition, or how we may know it between UCC language, ONA, of the United Church of Christ. She has been in this role since February 15th of 2023 and is the first, and this is incredibly important to say, she is the first Black female in this position in 51 years. Black person and Black female in this position in 51 years. Let me break that apart, because that is a massive, massive moment in ONA's history and for our church's history too. Now, Dr. Katrina is ordained and holds ministerial standing with the Disciples of Christ and the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries. She has over 16 years of experience as a clinician, working with diverse client population nationally and internationally, but mostly with those who are LGBTQIA and 2S plus identified, and particularly those who also identify as African American with an active religious or spiritual practice. She considers herself to be a psychospiritual generalist who utilizes holistic therapeutic counseling, and she is married to Reverend Katrina Roseboro-Marsh, and they reside on the beloved East Coast, where I reside too, with their darling Morky, I believe I'm saying that right, Zola Darling Roseboro-Marsh. Hi, hello, welcome, Dr. Katrina. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Hello, thank you. It's an honor being here today. And let me start so I can get this right. My wife's name is Tana,
Tana, I am
Tana,
so,
like
I
Montana. Yes.
am, thank you, thank you. No, it is
It's okay.
incredible.
It
No,
happens. It
it's
happens.
incredibly important because the First Lady, Reverend Tanya, needs to have her name said right because she is a force. And I hope that that those gathering with us get an opportunity to see her in the work too. I'm so glad to have you here, friend. And names matter,
It's
and
an
I appreciate
honor.
you.
It's an honor, friend. Thank you. Thank you.
So today, friends, is our first series episode. So what we're going to do today is really explore and kind of peel the onion layer back of what does it mean to say that we bring extravagant welcome for our queer siblings? And what does it look like when that doesn't happen? How does that impact queer folks in their mind, their body, and their spirit as a whole person? Because each of us are crafted uniquely with a whole complex system of what makes up our personhood. And this is going to really help us for the rest of our conversation and time. And of course, get you more well acquainted with the beloved Dr. Katrina and the work of ONA too. So that's where we're going to start. We're going to start with thinking of the work of becoming open and affirming and the damage that can and still does happen to queer folks when we offer falsely without real deep awareness of what it means to say all are truly welcome here. So, Dr. Katrina, I'd love to hear from you about what brings you to this particular work. So, and I'll reframe what brings you to this particular passion, because I think we do this work because we're passionate about it. And for you personally, what does it mean to be open and affirming?
I think it's kind of like a stepping stone or a building upon in terms of how life has shifted for me in working with the clinical setting. And as you said, most of the clients I've worked with are LGBTQIA and 2S plus, and seeing how in the therapeutic realm that spirituality was really not addressed. And even though we're queer identified, spirituality for most of us is extremely important. And so I started on the clinical path and also the spiritual path, and not understanding why there was a separation when we're talking about healing the whole person. So that was the first step of my interest, uh, unknowingly, of leading to this position, because it becomes individual, but then it becomes community wise. So, in hearing and reading about this position with ONA about open and affirming churches,
Mm-hmm.
as we affirm individually to affirm collectively, is the ultimate, I think, goal of validation of being human. Does that make sense? So that was
Yeah.
partly what attracted to me to this position. Was here is a space that does hold an individual in their identification, generally in the world, how we fit, whether it's career, whether it's education, whatever, but also that spiritual piece of saying you can bring both of those things into the worship space and relationship with God, and we will honor that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. You bring up a really critical part, the separation of the conversation, that spirituality is somehow different from or not in relationship to sexuality, gender, and all the
Mhm.
other isms that come and kind of vibrate out of a personhood. Oftentimes, even when walking through in my own like journey of becoming affirming of myself, right? Like there is an internal that
Yes.
happens to the external that happens,
Yes.
which I think,
Yes.
you know, you could speak to in ONA's work with the internal that happens within a congregation setting to the
Yes.
external that happens when you're inviting people in, right? You have to do that internal work. And queer people do that too. And there was definitely a separation for me of like, well, I have to work on affirming my sexuality, and then I have to work on how my spirituality works with that piece, and not realizing for a while, because of religious trauma and spiritual trauma, that those puzzle pieces always fit together, and they never
Yes.
required a separation or a triage of each area. And that was why it was becoming so difficult when I was trying to, you know, work with one piece, but then I
Yes.
couldn't, you know, touch the other one because of the narrative that I might have been offered. Yeah. I'd be curious to hear from both sides of your journey so far, and having really rich, robust dialogue with congregations already. I know you're on the ground and running with your team, but also kind of with your clinician background. Um, what does that conversation, that internal conversation, look like with churches who are beginning to ask these questions, and how do you paint the picture and the reality of the hard work ahead for them, because it's not easy to take this journey. Yeah.
It's not. And the word that comes up for me in thinking about this is process. That there's like there's a simultaneous parallel dual process that happens. And when we're talking about the congregational piece and using the word internal, because it is internal within the congregation, is why the ONA has a process to becoming open and affirming. And it's just like parallel to the process of becoming, as you are identifying your own identity individually, internally, with how you identify yourself to be in the world. So the process of becoming ONA is it's like let's, because we're using this therapeutic analogy,
Mm-hmm.
let's see, it's as if you're having a session, a
Mm-hmm.
session with a clinician, a counselor, what have you, where you ask questions. You ask questions of, well, how are you seeing yourself, or how are you interacting first with yourself? So, what's happening within the congregation? Who's in the congregation? What do you have that is addressing what is present in your congregations? Which we not only are talking about just the LGBTQIA and 2S plus individuals, but the intersectionalities of that. What are you doing in your congregation around ability, around so things of that nature. So that's like the first step, is to see, well, who's there?
Mm-hmm.
Who's there, and how are we meeting them where they are in our space? So that's the first part of the process of ONA. Then it becomes a little more deeper. Well, if we're not addressing these things or acknowledging these things, why are we not? What are the things keeping us from not really fully embracing and honoring these individuals within our congregation?
Mm-hmm.
And then the next step is, well, how do we get to the place to where we are? How do we get to the place of where we can not only just meet individuals where they are, but honor them where they are? And that honoring is the difference for me and my team in welcoming and being open and affirming, because welcoming is not being open
Mm-hmm.
and affirming. I want to make that clear,
Mm-hmm.
because it does not allow you to see, hold, and honor that individual in their fullness. It says you can come here but you can't fully be who you are
Mm.
here. And so our process of being open and affirming is to guide churches into completely and fully honoring and validating in openness individuals for who they are. And that includes them serving, that includes
Mhm.
them being able to participate in all manners of church life.
Yeah. That's just like a mini homily that I could replay for many, many people to hear. I appreciate so much your articulation and direct clarity that there's a difference between welcoming people and
Yes,
then
it is.
saying we are open and affirming of you. That
Yes,
validation component is incredibly critical, right? For any of us. Validation of our
it,
personhood is really a core birthright.
mhm,
When God
yes,
creates who we are in our unique way, God validates and leaves a mark on us with our Imago Dei tapestry. And when that bounces off another person and it maybe the thread gets caught on a comment and it starts to unravel, I really do feel personally that God cries, I cry, and other people cry that I can't even see yet. And that we
yes.
and that we are hoping. I really would love for you to give me that thread back so that I could see myself again, and then you could see
Mhm.
yourself again. Um,
Yes, yes,
this journey that churches take, and honestly that individuals take too, right? We're talking about
yes.
congregational settings, but this journey that maybe you're on this webinar right now for this series because you're asking a lot of questions around being affirming or open or new questions about how to support and care for queer people. It's a journey that is not easy, and
Mhm.
you could easily say no to, right? But for queer people, we can't say no to this journey, and we have taken it either
Right.
by force or because we need it to in order to stay here, physically, mentally, spiritually stay here. So for me personally, when I see churches taking this journey, individuals taking this journey in wrestling, I feel as if the community and the belonging to one another is growing, and that God is not crying as much anymore and is more saying,
Mhm,
okay, you're getting up,
mhm,
you're getting back on the
mhm.
bike, we're going to do this together. We're going to see the a rainbow and the sunshine at the end. um, I'm curious for you, Dr. Katrina. I think that and this is a personal opinion, I think that there can be some misconceptions that a lot of this work is done already, that we've had all the conversations that we can have, and that there's all the resources that we need, and that like queer Christians and queer folks within the UCC are good to go, that there is no harm taking place in the world. And I'd love to kind of demystify some of those misconceptions around those conversation points. So I'm curious about some of the things you might have heard, or some of the messages that you might deliver to folks who may think some of these things presently to help them walk through.
Well, let me just give you an example for
Yeah.
when we're talking about welcoming. And people reach out to ONA for many different reasons. And one of the reasons is people will go to a church that says they are welcoming, and they're in the service and something comes across that is not welcoming at all. And then that person is a place of trauma is hit for that person. And the person is already carrying so much in there, trying to find that safe space. And that does not happen. So to say that we have gotten to a space of where there's not more to be done, no, there's a language and a content that we have to teach and adopt.
Mhm.
which connected to that, and what the ONA will be doing is we will be recertifying churches
Mhm.
because of the difference in language, because of the highlighted issues that are now current day that weren't
Mhm.
even 5 years ago when people were certified, particularly around our trans and non-binary siblings.
Mhm.
So what we're doing in this recertification process is there will be a curriculum that churches will have to go through in order to be certified, because that was not there before. So there's a lot of work to be done. And I'm going to put this out here. Haven't fully had this conversation with my team, but we're having a lot of contact from people who are in non-monogamous relationships.
Mhm.
And they want to know, can I go to a space where I and my
Mhm.
family can be affirmed and
Mhm.
not harmed?
Mhm.
That's another thing we're going to have to talk about.
Mhm.
So there is a lot of work to do. There is a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
And even in some of the spaces that say that they're welcoming, you have individuals where it's welcoming to a space, but I can't hold my partner's hand, or I can't put my arm around my
Mhm.
partner in the
Mhm.
in the
Mhm.
seat or the pew.
Mhm.
And that's a disconnect from that individual and what's normal or natural for them. So there's still a lot of work to do
Yeah. And
around children, even, and
yeah.
supporting them wherever they are on the LGBTQIA and 2S plus identification.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, if you haven't realized by now, Dr. Katrina is a wealth of wisdom in the process, because it is a process, and honest,
Yes.
right? And in the vein of honesty, I am really grateful that you mentioned non-monogamy and the variations of relational dynamics that exist within queer context and not,
Mhm.
um, are just as important. Language changes all the time, and
Yes.
also the reality of learning and seeing visibly in a poor rhetoric light right now, the way that we're talking about trans and non-binary folks, from legislation that's taking place, and
Mhm.
the violent rhetoric that is incurring in the violence against the most marginalized within our queer community, which predominantly is Black trans women, um,
Yes.
is not necessarily new.
Right.
Sometimes, right? Sometimes we don't know what we don't know because we can't see what we can't see, because we've never been exposed to what we've never been exposed to. And so something happens when we do, right?
Yes.
There's a rupture and a shift and a core, like, fissure that takes place where we feel, I do believe that we feel um, something isn't right about what's happening. Something isn't useful about what's happening right now. And then we go to our usual uh, dictionaries and
Mhm.
thoughts, right? Which for the most part remain to be really binary
Yes.
about sex, binary about
Mhm.
gender, binary meaning a little box that we're supposed to fit into. And when the box doesn't have the answers, then we get really like scared and concerned, and we don't want change. Like, our bodies react to that too. And for queer people, especially in triple, quadruple marginalized status,
Mhm.
depending on who you
Yes.
are, right?
Right.
Um, we know this, and we are so excited that you are seeing it. We're sad that you're seeing it in this way. We're scared,
Yeah.
and let's be scared together, and let's ask questions, and let's share with each other and figure it out. Um, but I think that's one of the misconceptions that I see is, oh, this is new. you know, this attack against trans and non-binary kids is so outrageous in the last 2 years. And beloveds, it's not new. It's so not new. You're just seeing it in a really horrifying, escalated way, that's
And
unavoidable.
yes, let me pause you here. I'm going to say something because it's the truth. We said we're going to speak truth.
Yeah,
This is
we
the truth.
did.
And you just talked about the the level of for Black trans,
Hmm.
how this has been going on for so long.
Hmm.
And sometimes we don't see things unless it's something that, unless it happens to someone that's either close to us
Yep.
or someone that is identical. This is the importance of the
Hmm.
mirroring aspect, and the importance of seeing self in something. And so, yes, this has been going on for a long time, but it has not been as pronounced for those who are not Black and brown.
Yep.
That's the truth.
Yep.
And when it has now crossed the line as to where it is affecting those who are not Black and brown, now we're seeing it at a larger level.
Hmm.
And that is a sad truth
Hmm.
that we have to address. So the other part of this, when we're talking about queer, we have to talk about race. We have to talk
Hmm.
about racism.
Hmm. Yeah. And queer, in the gerund nature that it is, the noun verb flexibility, um, is also, in its theory and its action, pleads, begs, and demands to be subversive so that we are not just talking in a binary tonality about, okay,
Yes,
we're only going to talk about gender. We're only going to talk about sex. No, queer means we're going to talk about everything, every
yes,
fiber that makes up a human being, including race. Like, and it must be in the
yes.
conversation, or are we queering it, or are we not? So if you're looking at it from that kind of, how you engage in dialogue around, queer speak, it's incredibly critical, that you're being aware and always critiquing, internal to external. Critiquing not in a shameful, guilty way. That's not
Yes,
what that
yes.
means. But critiquing in a way that's like, did I see that? Did I not notice that? What is my work? What do I need to commit to? Am I aware that this is the reality? And how can I become more aware? And what are the resources that I have that I can give that others may not be able to? And how can I engage? That kind of critique. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that kind of critique, Rachel, it has been my prayer for a long time. God, why can't we just see each other as human? Why can't we just see each other in the commonalities of what make us siblings?
Mm-hmm.
Siblings in Christ, siblings of those that don't identify, just siblings, because it would shape how we would care one for another.
Mm-hmm.
It would shape how we do love each other and love out loud.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a disconnect in the humanness that we hold. And I'm this is my personal thing. I do think it is very much connected to politics,
Yeah.
to capitalism,
Yeah.
to things of those nature. But at some point, even we're talking about the Bible talks about, you know, at some point we have to get off the milk
Mm-hmm. Mm.
and we
Mm.
have to go to the meat.
Mm.
And this is the meat.
Mm-hmm.
Our commonalities, our sameness, our humanity, that is the meat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. That if I think it was, I know it is, Dr. Shaniko Walker Barnes, who taught me while in seminary and also is an incredible womanist theologian. Um, she speaks to, in her book, I Bring the Voices of My People, excellent
Mm,
book,
mm,
um, that if Black and Brown folks can't see their Imago Dei, then we can't see our collective Imago Dei.
mm.
That's fractured. That the work is ensuring that folks can be able to look in the mirror um, and see their full, rich complexity as beautiful, as God given, made, and glorified, and wondrous, and profound, and an agent of change and a gift to one another.
Yes,
And there
yes.
are too many people in this world, and there are too many queer people in this world who still can't look in the mirror and say that to themselves. And the detriment of when that is occurring, and it could be occurring right now, the
Mm,
possibility that that's happening right now is
mm,
high.
mm.
And what is our collective gasp and response and breath and return to work differently in how we care? And what is our personal work in order to approach that differently? Um, and that is when I think about queering and doing queer work, that's the consistent critique and model is thinking about um, collaborative humanity. How do we collaborate together? How do we see one another's humanity? Um, how do we bring intention to that work? And how do we continue to critique it so that we can re-engage language that changes and language that is abused, right?
Mm,
Language can
mm,
also be abused,
mhm,
and
mhm.
language can also be used as power, because everything
Yes.
can be manipulated for power. The biblical text
Mhm.
can be and is manipulated um, for a certain gain. But I know that I believe, and I know Dr. Katrina does too, that um, that's not the intent of the way that we
Right,
use the biblical text,
right.
nor is it the intent of how we use one another, which is,
Mm,
at least from my opinion, a continuation of
yes.
of the gospel in real time, living and breathing. Yeah. Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm. So I think that as we kind of come to a going down the hill and kind of ending our time together for the next 15, 20 minutes, I'd like to give our friends who are listening um, some perspective on what occurs when we engage in validating ministry and relationship with queer people. Um, and that might be something we can share personal narratives, or we can share what we've seen along our work. But I also really find it important for folks who may be listening or may be in a congregational journey too, to know and feel and hear stories of love and
Mhm.
change that can occur. Because we could talk all day long about harm and violence and the things that are happening against queer people, but there's something profoundly helpful too about hearing
Mhm.
stories of transformation and love. So I'd love for us to spend some time doing that, and then we can reflect on uh, what it looks like or means to love out loud too. Yeah, and we can, whoever wants to go first. I don't know if you want to go first. I asked the question, so I could too, but
You can go first. I'll go after you.
okay. um, I think for me, um, across various ways that I have done this work, time and time and time and time again, the most beautiful, profound thing to witness is this light bulb that goes off where a queer person realizes I'm not a question mark in this space.
Mm,
I'm I'm not something that you're trying to figure out. I'm actually invited to this table uh, to have this meal and to be with other people in a way that feels whole, and no piece of me has to be removed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I love being able to see that light bulb moment go off and to watch a queer person come alive, come fully alive, and be reintegrated
Yes.
within a church space to their genuine voice and their genuine personhood. Um, I think throughout Synod, I got to watch moments like that, be a part of moments like that. I still can't. I will hold the Synod experiences with me for a lifetime because they were so moving. But having queer people say, um, for the first time in a long time, I'm crying out of joy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm not crying because I'm sad or I'm in grief. Um, is a reminder of no matter how tired or exhausted or hard, how important this work is. Um, for myself personally, um, I have been religiously nomadic for half of my seminary experience because I had been pushed out and ousted in different settings.
Mm-hmm.
I came to the UCC by way of really waiting, um, really waiting for God to say, "Okay, I have a home for you. This is space and place." And so my home congregation is in Pennsylvania. I am not from Pennsylvania, so the unconventional nature of love
Mm-hmm.
can be so. This is also a way you can love louder, is you can say yes to unconventional things.
Yes. Yes.
Became a member of this church, served during the pandemic to their youth, loved it, watched babies grow up, watched youngings go to middle school from elementary school. But I will never forget, I have authorized lay ministerial standing in my MID process. I will never forget presiding over the table for the first time at this
Mm-hmm.
congregation
Mm-hmm.
and really being able to say that all are welcome to the table and know deeply that it was real and true. And I cried,
Yeah.
sobbed.
Yeah.
Um, and my kiddos, the kiddos that I was with, they were there. All of them were there. And this little kiddo who was literally a toddler and over, the 3 years that I was with them has grown, had gone to the children's garden to pick a tomato, little cherry tomato.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a pride pin on and he gave me the cherry tomato and he said, I love you. And it can
Oh.
be that simple and that beautiful. When someone like a child, children mirror for
Mm.
us the way to love loud, right? They
Yes.
have not been
Yes.
touched in a way by the world with its rhetoric. They are the imprint of the Imago Dei active, right?
Yes.
And when
Yes.
you can just gift something and say, I love you,
Mm-hmm.
simply. And that is, that's living out loud. That's living louder than the temptation to stay silent or the temptation to stay stagnant or the
Mm-hmm.
temptation to stay the same. Um, when people dare to move outside of those parameters and reach out to me or reach out to each other, um, like that's the work of the gospel come to life. Yeah, yeah,
Beautiful. Beautiful. What comes up for me in thinking about that is the beauty of all of the moments where the full self gets to not only be acknowledged but gets to be.
mhm,
And that's from in watching people be licensed and ordained. I was
yes,
an associate pastor for over 12 years. And those moments of where something that you thought would never happen, someone laying their hands on you, blessing what
mhm,
you say God has called you to do, and it being
mhm,
confirmed and validated that yes, God has called you to do this, and we're praying over you and sending you forth in Jesus' name to do the work for the people. And watching there, like you can almost literally see the burdens lifted off of them that they've carried, of the things that people have said, who they could not be, what they could not do. When in that moment they fully say, yes, God, I am who you say that I am. And then carrying that to thinking of some of my own spaces and places of after ordination, of being able to marry people. That's another thing of something been said that's been said, no, you cannot. Yes. And it is good in God's sight that the two become one. And having been able to be at people's bedside who were HIV positive and saying, yes, God does love you just as you are. That it's like it's a build upon, loving out loud, louder and louder and louder, of affirming, of confirming, of validating. And so it's how much can we show up in our full self of love, and in that validate for someone that they too are loved just as they are. Nothing needs to change. God loves you just how you are, regardless of why you are where you are, because where you are does not determine who you are. You are the beloved of God. You are the heartbeat of God. So that's what comes up for me with that.
Friend, I love you. I appreciate you so much. I'm so glad and excited that you are in this role with the Open and Affirming Coalition, and I'm proud to be a collaborative human who gets to be with you in that work from the Gender and Sexuality Justice Ministries team. We need each other in order to help those who are with us listening, who may go and talk about this conversation, invite others into the rest of the series. Katrina and I and our teams are here to support you where you are in this process, in this journey. That truly is called life. And that at the end of the day is complex, yes, but love really does make a way out of no way, because love is what birthed us, and what will hold us and take us back and rebirth us again. So what a profound and wonderful way to start this series, and to be able to talk about the differences between welcome and what open and affirming can look like, and what that process looks like. If you're in that process right now, or you're asking those questions, please keep going. We need you. We need you with us. And we love you. And we are thrilled that you're asking these questions and doing this hard work. That truly is the gospel coming to life in real time, when we ask hard questions and we don't shy away and we don't back away. And for queer folks who are on here journeying with us, we love you too. You're beloved. You're cosmic magic, created from the stardust that God brought together and put into your soul and being and breathed into your lungs. We also need you. So please know that we are also both here for you too. ONA has wonderful offerings. The Gender and Sexuality Justice team has wonderful offerings coming in September onward. So we're looking for ways that we can care for you and looking for resources that we can also open the doors wider and give you unique opportunities to share your ministries too. So, Dr. Katrina, is there any parting wisdom you would like to give the beloveds before we close off, or invitation to join any incoming offerings from ONA?
I have no parting wisdom. I just want to re-emphasize, we are here for you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to go through any part of this process, whether it is individual, whether it is congregational, whether it is regional. We're here to walk through this process with you. And as Rachel said, we need you too. We're the ONA, we're opening our board, we're opening for ambassadors on the ground. There are many opportunities for you to come and be your full self and to encourage another to be their full self with us. We'd love to have you to walk with us, connected in community, because community is where the love truly resides.
Mm. And the people said, Amen, because it is so. We love you. We'll see you
Amen.
next Thursday. We'll continue this series. We're gonna have so much fun together. I'm so grateful for you, Dr. Katrina. We'll make sure that in the chat you have links so that you know where you can go, that you can reach out to us. And we hope that you have a wonderful rest of the afternoon and a wonderful weekend ahead. And we'll see you next Thursday, same time. Thank you.
Siblings in Christ, if you were moved by this conversation, if what's been offered here has helped enhance your ministry or has nurtured your soul for the journey, please consider donating to the annual fund of the United Church of Christ by texting UCC to 41444. Your support will help to provide programs like this, which are an essential part of our ministries in the United Church of Christ. Thank you for your support. Be blessed on your journey and know that you are not alone. We are holding you in prayer. Amen.